caught down. Can he drop his opponent in time? Tifu spraying out the build. Here he goes. Are you kidding me? With the win and the pop-off celebration.
Like encounter one of the rarest bugs in the game, which is like when you make an edit or like build something, it'll just fling you off.
Welcome to the winner's circle. Your Fortnite World Champion, Booga!
Today is Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. My name is Jordan, but I go by OneUp Analytics. My co-host is Taylor, aka Somebody's Gun, and this is episode 2 of the Boomer Talk podcast. On today's episode, we talk about the lack of consequences for griefing in competitive events, the difficulty of punishing teaming in tournaments, and the recent tweaks to aim assist, as well as what to expect for controller on PC moving forward. All that and more on today's podcast. Hey Taylor, how's your Wednesday going?
Hey, what's up, Jordan? I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Not bad. Already had a pretty long discussion on Twitter today about kind of like the structure of Cash Cups currently and the state of it, and especially like the points-based matchmaking system. So already had a pretty in-depth discussion today about stuff related to Fortnite, so it was a good tie-in to the podcast here. But
Nice.
yeah, and so this past weekend we just finished up, I guess it's technically FNCS Solo Invitational, which pretty much wraps up this season of competitive Fortnite. We have 2 Cash Cups left. The Duos Cash Cup this Thursday, and then the Solo Cash Cup this Friday, right?
Yes, sir.
And then after that, that's the end of the season competitively and pretty much just the season in general, because next week starts Chapter 2, Season 3. But of course, like always, there's some drama surrounding the competitive events that happened this past weekend. The first one that comes to mind is kind of like the griefing that has gone on, and this, griefing has gone on since competitive Fortnite has started, and just kind of like the acting unprofessionally in general of players in these tournaments. And this weekend was no outlier. We saw a bit of it. What are your thoughts on that in general?
Yeah, so, obviously, this has happened before. This weekend, it just so happens to be 2 well-known professional players. Both players are signed. That's Unknown and Clicks. If anyone is unsure or doesn't have a Twitter, because that dominated Twitter for a few hours, at least Fortnite Twitter. And just a quick update as to what happened. Clicks snipes Unknown in one game. The next game, Unknown decides, I'm going to land on Clicks, and doesn't wind up actually finding him, winds up griefing some other guy, and both of them go their separate ways, talk a little trash. But yeah, we've seen this before, and it's interesting to see it with 2 of the top players, right? Because Clicks and Unknown in their own right are 2 of the best players within the NA East region, and it's not something I would expect, but at the same time, I'm also surprised we haven't seen it yet, because it's a battle royale, right? You can technically land anywhere and land on anyone if you want to. The replays are fully available. You can go in, scout someone's loot path, and find a weak point if you wanted to, and really grief someone's game. But if you're doing it for getting points, it's kind of a smart play. If you're doing it specifically because you want to ruin someone's game, I think that's a whole different point. Either way, I just see it as very childish, and something needs to change in order for this behavior to change, because history has shown us that the players themselves won't police this kind of activity from within. What do you think, man? I kind of talked a lot about that.
Yeah, I think like it's not even necessary to discuss this particular situation in depth because it's not. This situation isn't necessarily unique. Yeah, it's like two of the top players, but this is something we've seen happen in every tournament that we could even remember. So we could just talk about this generally, and in my opinion, we saw after it happened, people going on Twitter like always talking about how the community is childish. They need to just like basically just that they need to treat the game more seriously. And these are good like values to have. These are good like sentiments. But in my opinion, to hop on Twitter week in, week out and have the same thing happen and then talk about it in the same way, it just doesn't really make any sense to keep doing this because nothing is going to change by just telling people to grow up. Like, we've done this how many times now and we haven't seen any change in player behavior. So like my opinion on this is if this is a real problem, and it is in my opinion, there needs to be some sort of structural change to if we want it to stop. There has to be some sort of change to the rules, the way that tournaments are played, in order for this to start getting rid of this. We're dealing with a community of pretty young players, so to expect them to just kind of not act their age is a difficult thing to do. It's not exactly the most logical thing, and there are honestly very few older role models to lead by example too. Like if you think about like the main core of this competitive community, both in terms of professional players and non-professional players, like players that are just play competitively and don't necessarily win money all the time. Like most of them are in the range of like 14 to like 17 years old. And I know like, this is the Boomer Talk podcast, so we're both, a lot older than that age range. And it's easy, it's easy for us to say just like don't act childish, but when we were 14 to 17 years old, what were we doing? I remember back when I was like 14 years old, I was playing Modern Warfare 2, trick shotting and like shit talking people in like trick shot lobbies, like when they couldn't hit a trick shot or some shit like that, like stupid things, like you can't really expect players to just magically grow up because you tweeted at them on Twitter to grow up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I would agree with that same. Or I not necessarily agree, but echo that same kind of sentiment. I was a shithead when I was a kid, so like I can't expect other people to be different than I was. But what we can expect is Epic Games to put out statements to try and legislate this kind of behavior, this kind of activity out of the game. And we've seen a couple different possibilities or thoughts to protect against this. One would be making everyone have X amount of delay on your stream if you're going to stream the event. And so that would help with like immediate stream sniping. But even in this most recent example, the player goes in, watches the replays, find out where this person lands, and is able to grief them that way. So I enjoy the replays being live as we go, and I think that you should, as a player, as a coach, as an analyst, be able to kind of see that stuff in real time, or I guess slightly delayed. So the only other possibility, and really the most realistic one, would be Epic putting out a statement, providing new rules, examples, really clarifying what they mean when they just have essentially 3 words in there, or 2 words, like sabotaging a game, or sabotage, purposefully sabotaging, something like that. I forget exactly what it is in the rules. But beyond that, it doesn't really explain what's a punishable offense. And Unknown didn't get punished for what he did, which I I don't necessarily think he should have. Or at least not a ban, maybe punished from his own org because what he did was stupid. But there needs to be some more clarification, because if Unknown's getting away with that, then what are the limits of griefing someone's game? Like, say it wasn't 2 players that were in contention that finished the day 19th and 20th. What if it was the first place player getting landed on by the 99th, 98th, 95th players who all landed somewhere else everywhere besides this last game? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
we've seen that happen. So there needs to be something from Epic's perspective, in my opinion, that prevents that.
Yeah, and it's honestly such a difficult thing to police because it's a unique situation, especially when you're talking about solos, because you have a player who's in a championship round, and it's his team is just him. It's like there's nobody else that is relying on him. It's just him or her, and what that player decides to do with his game is like more or less, up to him. Like there's nobody telling him that he needs to perform in a certain way. There's no like team surrounding him. Like if we talk about like team sports, for example, you talk about basketball or whatever it is. You have a team that is relying on you to be like the best player that you could be, not get pissed off that somebody posterized you and now you're gonna run down the court and try to posterize him back. Like you have a team that's relying on you, and if you act like an idiot, then your teammates are not gonna like you. You're probably gonna get benched by the coach. You're not gonna play, and there are ways in other sports and other games to basically deal with situations like this, and to essentially to incentivize people or disincentivize people from doing stuff like this, right? But when you're talking about Fortnite, especially solos, there's no system in place for that. You have players that are part of organizations, but orgs in Fortnite are, like, for lack of better words, like, they're irrelevant. Like, if an org decides to drop a player because he acted like an idiot in a game, what does that really do to the player? He could still compete in whatever tournaments he wants to. He could still make all the money that he wants to through the game. Like, he could do whatever he wants. Like, orgs are pretty much irrelevant in Fortnite, in the current structure of how competitive Fortnite is. So orgs don't have any power over players. In a team-based mode, like squads, you might have a little bit of that kind of like ability to punish players for that, because if one player on a squad acts like an idiot and throws the squad's game, the rest of the squad's going to hate him. They're going to maybe drop him if they decide that that's what they want to do. And so you have a little bit of you have some sort of way to punish players for doing stuff like that. But especially in solos, there's really nothing you could do unless you're Epic Games, unless you have the ability to instate rules and suspend players, ban players for doing stuff. But even then, like, there's such a gray area in this topic that it's really hard to punish players. Like, for example, what happened this weekend with Unknown. It's hard to understand what people's motivation for doing things are. It's hard to, it's just honestly a difficult situation to deal with.
Yeah, I would agree 100% because if Unknown's not streaming, like how are you going to say that he just didn't want to land Pleasant his last game? That was his plan, that was his strategy. He scouted it out. He knew what he was going to be able to get at Pleasant. Um, and obviously like there's context to every situation, but it becomes harder and harder to prove. And while we're throwing out that this should be legislated, I think both you and I understand how difficult it can be to police this kind of activity and hold players accountable.
Yeah, that's like the main problem here with any rules in this game is number one, how do you prove it? You don't know the motivation of players. Even if they're streaming, you can't tell what's going on in their head. You can't tell, like, if we're like we're talking about other situations where like players are teaming and stuff like that. You can't tell what players told each other before the tournament started, before they started streaming. So how do you prove it is like the main thing that is difficult in this situation. And then number two, like where does the line get drawn? And in terms of what we've seen recently with Epic Games and competitive events and competitive bans, when they suspend somebody, when they ban people, there isn't much communication from Epic's part to explain the situation and essentially like set an example for like this is what you're not allowed to do. So we have players getting banned and we generally know why that got banned, but like we don't know what pushes one situation over the line and forces Epic to ban them, whereas another situation where it seems fairly similar, a player doesn't get banned, right? So it's like without that communication, we don't like first of all, we don't know how to draw the line in general, but especially like from a player perspective, if Epic's not communicating with us, we have no idea if Epic has even drawn a specific line and if they have, where it is. And you know, kind of to move on because our next topic is pretty relevant to what we're talking about right now. With teaming and teammates landing in, you know, pretty close drop spots. That's another thing that we saw this weekend. What are your thoughts on that? On teammates landing in the same POI, being in pretty close proximity in early game, and you know, kind of the gray area of what's teaming and what's kind of just playing smart and playing cooperatively.
Yeah, this is so the first example that comes to me is obviously Janice and Tayson were accused of teaming off spawn because they shared a drop spot. Then we also have Zayt and Saf landing at the same POI and then splitting that, never really fighting off spawn. But either way, like just because they don't fight off spawn doesn't necessarily mean they're teaming. And I think it's almost impossible to prove what, if any, prior communication happened. You know what I'm saying? Like you
Right.
can't, Epic Games can't just freaking subpoena someone's Discord records, right? Like that's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's just a lawsuit waiting to happen if they tried that. Probably why they most likely, actually I don't even know, I don't think a company like Epic Games is going to even try that kind of stuff. So it's based on what you can see in game, right? And we saw the Dubs and Waffles situation that was declared teaming. Two teammates landing at a POI, and that was a little more in the gray area in my opinion because there was another person that landed at their drop spot. So they both fought that other person but didn't fight each other. So that's a little more questionable to me. But if two teammates are just landing in the same area, I mean, is it smart? No, because it can very easily be construed as teaming. But if that's where you landed for all of duos, you've been practicing that drop spot for so long, you're so familiar with it, why would you go anywhere else besides just to avoid that whole stigma of teaming. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I totally understand what you're saying, and that's the thing. Like, I think the biggest concept we have to tackle here is that, like, I guess the difference between communication and nonverbal communication, right? Like, we don't. It doesn't necessarily need to be spoken about on Discord before the tournament in order to be cooperating in some manner, right? Like, we have a situation where pro players are scrimming against each other all the time and playing against the same players all the time, dropping the same drop spots that they do in tournaments, and then you have a situation where players know where other players are dropping, and through scrims are basically refining their loot paths in order to basically cooperate with other players' loot paths, right? Like, if you're dropping at Sweaty Sands, say, and you know that another player that's going to be in the FNCS finals with you is dropping also at Sweaty Sands, but he's going to drop at the other end of Sweaty Sands, right? So like which chests are undoubtedly yours, which chests are undoubtedly his, and which chests and which parts of Sweaty Sands are going to be kind of like a possibility that you guys get into an engagement. So you're going to avoid those places. And maybe the other player, if you start to avoid those places in scrims, maybe the other player decides, hey, I could kind of swoop in and take an extra chest from him because he's avoiding that area now. And so basically through it's not through direct communication with one another. You're not even talking about it at all, but through nonverbal communication, you're gradually cooperating with each other and building loot paths that basically just coexist, beneficially for both of you, right? And so how do you punish this, or how do you regulate this at all? There's no direct communication happening. There's nothing that I could see that's necessarily against the rules. There's one rule where it's like kind of related to this, and I have it pulled up right here. In the rule book, it says plan movement agreement between two or more opposing players to land at specific locations or to move through the map in a planned way before the match begins. And that's something that's obviously banned from competitive Fortnite. But that word agreement is so like what does that mean? Like, does agreement have to be like direct communication where you're talking to the other person saying, yo, you get these chests, I get the other chest, and like we don't ever fight off spawn because that screws both of us? Or is agreement just the fact that like you play scrims together all the time and you kind of have this nonverbal agreement where you don't go for certain chests and you don't engage with each other in certain areas of the POI?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and what comes to mind for me is heat scrims. So people scrimming and playing against one another, almost the same exact lobby that you're going to be playing against the week before, the day before the actual tournament. And I understand Fortnite's very different than most games. You need more players to be in a lobby to populate the lobby to a point where it's recognizable to what the actual tournament's going to be. But much like what you were saying, is you can condition certain players during those scrims to act how you want them to during the tournament. And that conditioning is coming from something outside of the tournament, which is very strange. Like, an example would be Stompy and Aqua using the minigun on high ground. They condition people during weeks of FNCS, so when someone heard the minigun on high ground, you don't try and contest height. Like, it's It's Aqua and Stompies. You let them have it. You play differently. All right, this game might not be ours. But if you're doing this off the drop and in scrims, when it's not happening within a tournament, quote unquote, actually not even with quotations, like if it's not happening within a tournament setting, then is that technically going to affect and go against rules? I don't think currently how they're written, that's not going to happen. I'm just not a fan of like the specific scrims against people that you're like the exact lobbies that you're going to be playing against, because you're essentially putting out what the tournament is before it even happens. Like it's almost like playing the finals of whatever sport against the team, and then now you're actually going to play it on TV and this one counts. And it's a really weird situation that Fortnite puts us in, because you need to have those scrims and you need to play against like the top tier players. Most regions probably don't even have multiple lobbies that they can fill with top tier players. And I think we've kind of gotten away from where we first started here, which was teaming. And again, it comes back to what we said, or what you said earlier, is the statements from Epic, reinforcing, here's a video of why this person got banned, here's the rule that they broke, and here is why we banned them. That would go a long way, because if you're not an active community member, you have no idea why these people got banned, and you have the same risk of trying to blur those lines of the rules and getting banned yourself. And the only thing that you'll get is a pop-up on screen saying you can't compete for X number of days, teaming collusion, whatever the reasoning is. It's like a sentence is the best you get. And I think you could really dissuade other players from, pushing those boundaries if we got clear-cut statements backing these bans, explaining what happened with proof to the community.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of crazy to me that at this point they haven't done anything like that. That they haven't clearly delineated the difference between like teaming and just kind of, coexisting benevolently in a POI with another player. Like these are things that are clearly problems, because we are seeing players getting banned for it, and fairly frequently. So, I mean, sure, you could say that like a lot of these players are breaking these rules maliciously, but there are definitely players who are getting banned or getting suspended without really intending to do anything malicious, right? So there's a clear disconnect between what Epic knows about its rules and what the players know about the rules. And that's a really big issue. I mean, Epic has begun to do a slightly better job at communicating with the community related to patches, which honestly, this is maybe a discussion we're gonna have in a little while, but like even their patch communication is like pretty lacking. But I really hope that they begin to communicate more about these bans. Like, do people like I don't really know the procedure that much, because I've personally never gotten suspended. I've never gotten banned. Do these players get more communication from Epic about why they got banned, or is it literally just something pops up on your screen, you're banned for 60 days, and there's like 3 words about why you got banned, like teaming in a competitive event, and that's it? Or do they also get like an email from Epic and like directly contacted by Epic to explain it? Like, do you know the answer to that?
I personally have no idea, sir.
like, because imagine what we've seen on social media is like the entire process. Just like someone logs on to a game one day after a cash cup, after a tournament, whatever it is, and it just says banned for 60 days, teaming/collusion, and that's it. And there's like no other communication between Epic and the player. Like, you might, if you did something maliciously and like you know that you intentionally teamed, then you probably know what they're referring to. But like, imagine you didn't do it maliciously. You did something that they misconstrued as teaming, or maybe you thought something was okay and it wasn't. Like, imagine you didn't know what they were talking about and you just got banned for 60 days and all it says is teaming/collusion and you have no idea what part of the game they're talking about. Like, it could just be anything that happened in the 10-game tournament or however long the tournament is. Just one of the things you did was against the rules and you have no idea what it is. Like, imagine how crazy that is.
Yeah. No, and so on the opposite end of it, we see these clips that come out on Twitter that, claim why they're being banned. But what if there was a whole nother thing that people didn't post on the internet, which is the reason why they got banned?
Yeah.
And we have no idea. Like, everyone thinks it's this one reason, but it's really something else.
Yeah,
it just
exactly.
leaves so much to be just guess. You have to guess what the hell's going on.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I just want to, I've reached out to them after every single major ban for a statement, and I've never received a response. Just to throw that out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a crazy situation. And I honestly, like, I don't personally know that that's how it works. Like, maybe Epic does reach out to the player personally. I would hope that they do. I think, like, to ban a professional player who makes money by playing the game for 60 days and to not personally reach out to them and to literally just have their notification be a 2 or 3 word pop up on their screen, I think that would be extremely, like, just I don't even like know like what word I'm looking for, but it would just be like ridiculous. So I personally hope that they reach out personally to that player. I don't know that they do. I haven't seen any evidence that they do, but even if they do, you're still leaving the entire community in the dark, and to basically rely on the community to pull up the exact clip that got this player banned and to have them be right is, you're leaving a lot to a community that,
we just talked about is not mature and griefs each other within major tournaments. So yeah. I think a good example is the way I think about that. Imagine when A-Rod got banned for steroids, no one ever said anything. He just stopped getting put into games. Like, A-Rod on the Yankees, biggest baseball team, like one of the most notable times in Yankee history in recent years, right? And one of your best players just stops going out there. And there's no reason why. He's not on the field for 120 games. And you're like, okay, this is weird after the first game or two, like maybe he's hurt. And then he just keeps not playing in tournaments. And you're probably like, all right, what the fuck is this? And it just makes no sense if you think about it from strictly a spectator fan perspective.
It's like, imagine you're playing basketball and you commit a foul, but they don't stop the play immediately. After the play ends, so like, let's say your team scores a basket or whatever it is, or the other team scores a basket. After the play, the ref says, blows the whistle and says, there was something on that play that was illegal, therefore the play is not valid anymore. And he doesn't say what the violation was. He doesn't say like what, like when it specifically happened, which player, like it's just like something that happened in that play, not allowed to happen. but that's it, and we're moving on. Like that's
and that player's gone.
that player's gone, and that's that's the equivalent. Like you're looking around like what, we have no idea what just happened.
Yeah.
So
And there's like more context, obviously. Like people can do their own research, but even still, like we've said, it's all up to guessing and speculation when it really shouldn't be coming in these major tournaments.
yeah, and my last point on this, before we move on, because I don't want to harp on this too long, but I also just kind of find it funny that like Epic's rulebook and like the terms of competitive events are, they basically just like make the rules more confusing. I've looked through the rulebook to try to see like, okay, is this specific play against, or this specific like occurrence against the rules of competitive events, and you read the rules and it's just not specific at all, and it just makes things more, it produces more questions. And we had Epic at I think it was the beginning of this season, or maybe it was during last season, where they banned pickaxing, and I think they called it like signaling. And I believe, like, I don't have it pulled up in front of me right now, but I believe there's like something to the effect of not allowing nonverbal communication. And as we just talked about it for the past 15 minutes or whatever it is, like what is nonverbal communication? Like what does that entail? So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to keep harping on the same topic, but like
Yeah, I think this horse has been beaten enough here.
But yeah, so with that, I guess we can move on to our third and final topic, which is again, and I hate the fact that we're going to wind up talking about this every single episode, but
Nah.
but it's aim assist. Dude, literally, when I thought of the idea to start this podcast, I thought in my mind, like, the one thing I don't ever want to talk about is aim assist, because that's the only thing that ever gets talked about on Twitter in this community. And here it is, episode 2, and we're talking about it for the second time out of 2 episodes. But it's so relevant right now that like we just kind of have to talk about it. So what's today? Today's Wednesday. Yesterday there was a change, and here we go again, like just very vague. There was a change, there was a tweak to aim assist controller on PC, and that's the communication we got from Epic. What are your thoughts on that? We actually don't know what the specific tweaks are. We have a lot of people theorizing what the tweaks are, and to be honest, the theories are so wildly different depending on who you talk to. You have people saying they nerfed close range, like the stickiness in close range of linear and expo. You have people on the other side of the equation saying it was a literal aim assist buff. Like, what are your thoughts? We both play on controllers, so like we have a little bit of experience with this new change. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you think the changes are? What do you think about the changes? If you're correct on what the changes are. Yeah.
All right. So I tweeted these out last night, and this was after we played for a few hours. Honestly, most of them remain true. After I played again this morning, but I'll just go through them. It does feel like there's some more recoil on the ARs that wasn't there previously, at least on controllers. I can't speak to playing on keyboard and mouse. I'm not good on keyboard and mouse, so I wouldn't know the difference. Then for long range, it feels like there's a slight pull towards enemies or opponents, whatever you want to call them. It kind of has that slight tracking at a distance now that was definitely not there before. Linear compared to Legacy was so much harder to hit long range shots where you actually had to aim yourself. And then another thing I noticed was before this tweak, you didn't have to wait for your first shot accuracy to fully close on controller to be able to hit an accurate shot. Like it would kind of just aim assist for you, and you could do it slightly before the first shot accuracy closed, and it would be accurate and would hit the player. Now it doesn't seem like that's true. It seems like it doesn't automatically just aim for you before first shot accuracy closes, which I like. And then I tweeted that the aimbot within a box feels slightly nerfed, but then I played the Benji Fishy Cup today, and it feels like it hasn't changed. I was playing on 120 ping, and it literally feels exactly the same, to the point where I could just hold an SMG, right trigger, and forward stick and get an elim. Then the last thing that I noticed was you 100% get some aim assist through builds. Like when you're shooting at builds and they're breaking, especially even like when they're fully built, you kind of get a little pull, but especially when you're breaking the builds, it pulls to the player within the box, and that is absolutely ridiculous. Like we know in stacked end games, in packed lobbies, you can't build that well. So why are we going to allow people to have freaking aimbots on players that aren't even going to be able to react well enough to prevent themselves from getting shot? Like that's just something that I believe should absolutely not be in the game. Like maybe the long range accuracy, yes, okay, we can improve long range accuracy a little bit. I still would like to see some tweaks to where you don't just have the ability to run around with an SMG and jump in boxes. And I don't know. I haven't played enough to really say whether or not the long range accuracy is overpowered or not powerful enough. I don't know yet, but in general, it does feel like they're kind of just playing with it a little bit before finalizing it. And maybe this week they'll get some data, get some feedback, and then tweak it again come next season. And hopefully that's a little better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I really wish that I mean I wish that Epic would have specifically described the changes that they made. I know personally I play on controller, and I got on yesterday, and my aim definitely felt weird to start with. Like I definitely felt like there was something different, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it. And look, like I've said this before, like I'm fine with changes to aim assist. I'm fine with an aim assist nerf, like especially close range aim assist. So do what you have to do in terms of tweaking aim assist. But I just like personally would like to know what those tweaks are so that I could adjust the way that I aim to account for that. To have to log on, and like I played on Legacy for a long time. I played on Legacy until they got rid of it from the game. So I had to make that switch from Legacy to I play on Expo now, and like that change took a while, and my sensitivity in general just felt so weird for a long time. So and I hate that feeling of getting onto a game that you've played for a long time and then it feeling completely different. Like all your mechanics are now completely different. You have to completely adjust how you move around, how you look around, and all that stuff. So to now have to potentially do that every time they want to make a small tweak to aim assist, and to not know what that change is, it's like it definitely makes me feel a little bit less motivated to get on the game right after a change happens. You know what I mean? Like to have to deal with a change to my sensitivity that I did not choose to change every couple weeks, it kind of sucks. And I feel for I mean, I'm not a pro player, so like, you know, I could complain about it, but like doesn't really matter to me. But like for players that are pro players that are on controller, like Unknown, I know that Unknown played on Legacy until Legacy was taken out of the game as well, and he switched to X. I think he was playing around with Expo and Linear at the beginning, and for a while he didn't feel like himself at all, and you could see that his placements were took like a pretty decent hit as a result, because he was playing on sensitivity that he had never played on before. He was playing like a game that felt completely different than the game he's been playing for multiple years, and that really sucks. And for controller players to have to deal with that every single time Epic wants to make a tweak to aim assist, it's, I don't know, it's not ideal.
Not whatsoever, my friend. Not whatsoever. But I mean, I see both sides of it. And honestly, I don't know if they know how to fix it. Like, there's a lot of things in this game that have been around for so long that, like, they've talked about trying to fix, and nothing really has improved too much, right? And it's just coming to a point where I'm like, okay, do they just not know what to do? Is that what the issue is? Or is there something in the works that just takes longer than I thought? Because I would have hoped by now things like the end game performance would be improved, but there's still clips on a regular where players can't build because whatever is going on, like, and that's just makes me think that there's some issues in this game that Epic just don't know how to deal with, and maybe aim assist is one of them. Like, I have no idea how that works, and I have no idea how difficult it is to code and write a soft aim assist within a game. I can't speak to that, but it's starting to appear more and more like they don't have a good answer. But even if they don't have a good answer, I don't know the community is ever going to be accepting of whatever aim assist is until it's gone.
Yeah. And yeah, I've railed on Epic so much in this podcast already, but but no, like they are in a very tough situation here, and I tweeted I think it was like an 8 tweet thread the other day, before the aim assist patch came out, basically trying to like temper people's expectations for what the change was going to be. And if you haven't read that yet, like I encourage you to go read that. It's like a little bit outdated now because it was before the change, but they are in a difficult situation right now because there's so like the main point of the thread was that people right now are blaming like close to 100% of the imbalance in the game. And when I talk about imbalance, I mean like I guess like the meta imbalance and also like the controller mouse and keyboard imbalance. A lot of the community is placing nearly all of that blame on aim assist and just aim assist. Like, people don't really talk about SMGs being OP. Some people talk about drum guns being OP, miniguns being OP, but nobody really talks about SMGs being overpowered. Nobody really talks about AUGs being overpowered. And these things, like, they are kind of overpowered. When you see people slicing into boxes and like shredding people with an SMG, part of that, the fact that they're hitting every single one of their shots, as a player moves around a box, yeah, part of that's from aim assist, no doubt about that. Like, I'll never deny that. But part of it is the fact that they're literally using an SMG that shoots how many bullets per second and is in close range, like pretty much it's significantly more powerful than pretty much any shotgun. And players still play this game, especially mouse and keyboard players play this game like the shotgun is the most powerful weapon or the meta in close range. And it's simply not. Like, if you have a gold pump, you have a pearl pump, you could 200 someone to the head. But like, in most situations, the SMG is the gun to have in close range. Like, especially if you're in the same box as someone, it's the gun to have versus a shotgun. And people will sit there, will sit in a box with somebody, and and they're using a pump, and they hit someone with a pump shot, and the other person shreds them with an SMG, and they cry aim assist, and it's like, okay, yeah, part of that's aim assist, but part of that's the gun. And so my point is, like, to place 100% of the blame on aim assist is an overreaction, and like we could debate on like how much that is an overreaction. You could, like, I'm not going to say it's complete overreaction. Obviously, I'm still saying like aim assist is still a problem. But if you're placing 100% of the blame on aim assist and expecting that an aim assist change is going to fix 100% of the problems, you're wrong. And it's not going to happen, and you're going to be disappointed. But if gun changes and a slight meta change is accompanies an aim assist change, we might move closer to a better state of the game. And so that's why I say Epic is in such a bad situation right now, is because everyone is expecting an aim assist change to fix all their problems, and it's not going to happen. And even if they did some sort of massive nerf to aim assist, you're going to have a huge chunk of the community pissed off at you, because there are controller players in the community, and even though a lot of top tier controller players think that aim assist is overpowered, they're still going to be pissed if you do a massive nerf. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way around it. Like, if you do a massive nerf, you're going to piss off controller players. If you do a really, really small tweak, which it seems like they did in this past update, you're going to piss off mouse and keyboard players. So they're in such a tough situation here, where there's never going to be a situation, at least in the short term, where everybody's happy. And that's compounded by the fact that people do overreact to some degree about aim assist in general. So yeah, I just talked about that ad nauseum, but like, yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I think it's like an important thing for people to realize. And so another thing that I didn't tweet about the other day, but I was thinking about, is I think it's pretty clear at this point now that there's never going to be a massive controller nerf. They're not going to, like, one day have a patch where the next day controller players are wiped off the face of the earth and they're never placing in tournaments ever again. Like, that's never going to happen. So in terms of what we can expect for the future, it seems pretty clear that they're going to go with like this gradual nerf where they do a small tweak here, wait a couple weeks, gather some data, see how things are, make another small tweak, and stuff like that. And eventually you'll get to a state where controller players' aim assist is at the desired state. But until that happens, like, we're going to see people that are angry, because mouse and keyboard players are not going to wake up one day and magically be, cover the entire top of the leaderboard. Like, that's just never going to happen. And so you're going to have people that are a little bit angry about that. Additionally, with these small tweaks, you're not going to see a huge change in player behavior. Like, you're not going to wake up one day and never have a controller player hop into your box with the SMG again. Like, that's with a gradual nerf, that's not going to happen, because we saw what happened yesterday with the change. Like, if there was a close range nerf, it was pretty small, to the point where controller players still feel completely comfortable hopping into your box and spraying you, right? So, like, there's no change in player behavior, even if there was a small change in how aim assist performs. So, like, with this gradual nerf, essentially, to sum it up, like the player behavior is not going to change as quickly as you want it to, and just the state of the game is not going to change as quickly as you want it to if you're a mouse and keyboard player. So, that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward.
Yes, sir. I really don't have much more to add than that. I think you said it well. Before we continue to harp on aim assist, I could add stuff, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I'm sorry for talking about it so long. Like that's just the nature of how I think about things. Like I just go on tangents. Uh, but I hope that people got something out of that.
All right,
But
what do we got next, sir?
yeah, so to wrap this up, like we did last week, we're gonna end it with some rapid fire questions. So to start it off, number one, would you rather good loot RNG or good zone RNG?
Zone RNG.
Okay. And also, wait, this is your answer probably won't change, but this is like assuming that you can't just like land at a mythic spot and like get like a guaranteed gold AK every game. Like you like let's say like you're forced to always have gray loot. Do you
You're
still
talking to a guy that played without weapons and got 100 points. If I have zone, I know what to do with it.
Okay, fair enough. I don't even know if I have a good answer to that question. I guess I would go with zone RNG as well. Um, Number two, what's one quality of life change you'd like to see going into the new season?
Is
To
communication
competitive Fortnite. To competitive Fortnite.
is communication from Epic Games the quality of life change?
Yeah, yeah.
I think based on this podcast, if I said anything other than that, we'd be hypocrites.
Fair enough. Personally, I guess like I would agree with you, but if I have to answer something different, I would say a change to arena. Like I would like a more competitive arena mode that more closely mimics like tournaments and stuff like that. Um, Number three, if you could bring back one POI from the old map and then use it to replace a current POI on the new map, which POI are you bringing back and which one are you replacing it with?
Greasy Grove, and it's coming back for Wailing Woods because I hate bushes and I hate trees. So traveling through that area is just like, it's terrible. Just give me Greasy, let me land there every game, and I'll be happy.
And to clarify, you definitely mean taco time greasy, right?
Yeah. That
Okay.
that BS where you can't build or do anything like that. I want that crap back in the game,
Okay.
and add the ability to never build in it as well.
Okay. I like that actually. I like that. Personally, I gotta go. Ooh. This is actually not a POI, but like people used to call it Mexico. It was like down in the
Ooh, yeah.
southeast of the map. Yeah. I really like that place. I really wish that was in the game still. Um, and I'd have to put it ooh, where Lazy Lake is.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
big Lazy Lake fan.
I don't really like Lazy. I think people wanted it to be tilted, and I don't think it's tilted.
True.
And then finally, question number 4. If you had to convert a current POI to a mythic spot and add a new mythic weapon, which POI would it be, and what's the new mythic weapon?
All right, I have to think about this one.
All right,
So I'm
I'll answer it while you think. If
okay.
you're cool with that. All right. So I think I'm gonna do Lazy Lake again, just because of where the other mythic spots are on the map. Like I don't think there's really another spot for it. So yeah, it'd be Lazy Lake, and then my new mythic weapon would be a deagle that acts like a flintlock. So if you've ever played like the Operation whatever it is game modes, they have like an upgrade to the deagle where like when you shoot, like if you shoot it at the ground, like you'll pop up. I think that's awesome, and I also love the deagle, so I think that would be a really cool mythic weapon.
Okay, I can see that. Um, so I'm gonna go with Frenzy Farms, and I'm gonna go a little more in depth for you. So like you gotta go into the corn and then there's like an underground lair where the vault is, and then there's a farmer guy, and the farmer guy is holding a pickaxe,
Okay.
and the pickaxe is the weapon.
Ooh.
It's a one-shot pickaxe
Oh.
that does 200 damage.
Oh.
Yes.
No. I don't like that.
Yes.
I
But you
don't
have
like
to
that.
throw it. You have to throw it, and it can be
What?
picked up. So like you can't just swing it. You have to throw it at someone, and
So
then you have to pick it back up.
It's basically the mythic fish.
No. It's a pickaxe.
Yeah, but it's the mythic fish in pickaxe form.
But it's a pitchfork. It looks like a pitchfork, not a fish.
Okay, it's interesting. I actually think it would be kind of cool to have like pickaxe upgrades where it hits for like 40 instead of 20.
Yeah.
Like that'd be interesting. I don't know.
We should add a sword too.
Yeah.
Shing shing.
Yeah. I'd like to see a sword that actually makes that shing shing sound by Mongrel. A little epic deal with Mongrel.
Oh, that'd be sick.
But anyways, that wraps up episode 2 of the Boomer Talk podcast. Do you wanna plug your socials?
Yes, sir. One Up Analytics on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitch. If I missed anything, it's One Up Analytics on everything. What about
Okay.
you?
Okay. Yeah. One of analytics on everything. Okay, so since you decided to just do that, yeah, if you want to find a Taylor, it's somebody's gun on all platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Discord.
Yeah, Discord works
Discord.
too.
And he posts some good VOD reviews, some analyst content. He does coaching, some good stuff. Definitely check him out. And me personally, you could find me One Up Analytics on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and yeah, I post data related things, stats, and like occasionally we'll like post threads where I go on rants, kind of like what I did in this podcast today, where I just talk about my thoughts. So if you like analytical stuff, definitely check me out. And that pretty much wraps up this podcast. Next week, it's gonna be a big episode. I think we're gonna live stream it, and we're gonna have face cams, and we're gonna have a guest on, special guest. So it's gonna be a big episode next week. So definitely, I guess follow me on Twitch for that, or follow me on Twitter, so that you stay updated with that. But otherwise, thanks for listening, and yeah, peace.